for joining us for this episode of Inside Town Hall. I'm your host, Madeline Shields. Joining us on the program today is Sioux Falls City Councilor Janet Brecky, and her guests are Rebecca Kiso-Knudsen and Laura Smith-Hill from Lutheran Social Services. You know, many of the people in our community are diverse, and for many, English is a second language for them. Can you talk a little bit about what we are talking about with Lutheran Social Services today?
Well, our last census would indicate that we have about 2,800 people in our community in Sioux Falls that are unable to speak English fluently. And that has become, to me, a diversity issue. And as we welcome diversity into this community, particularly through our refugee programs and our immigrants as they come to our community, I think it's increasingly important that we generate opportunities for employment and for career advancement by making sure that as a community that we step up and begin to get more involved in giving them accessible opportunities to learn English.
Okay, and your guests here today, we have Rebecca and Laura. Thank you for joining us. Talk a little bit about, you're with Lutheran Social Services, and it's the Center for New Americans. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do there?
Sure. Well, Lutheran Social Services of South Dakota is a statewide social service ministry organization. We've been around since 1920. We were founded right here in Sioux Falls in 1920. And we've evolved in terms of the types of services that we deliver in our community. The Center for New Americans is one of our service lines. Through the Center for New Americans, we assist the federal government in helping to resettle refugees into the city of Sioux Falls. So what that means is that we help provide case management, we help get the children enrolled in school, get immunizations, get housing set up, really get all the basic needs established so that they can be successful at integration. And really a key to that successful integration is English language acquisition. And so Laura is our supervisor for all of our English language programs, and it can speak more specifically about the types of things that we do in those programs.
Okay, yeah, Laura, tell us a little bit, who are your students?
Our students have hailed from over 46 different countries over the years. They're from around the world, and all of our learners are adults, although we do work with some youth at President's Academy here in Sioux Falls. Who are they? I would say a good number of the students that we work with, 70% or more, are what we in our field call SLIFE. So that means students with limited and interrupted formal education. The strategies that we use to support learning for people who've had really interrupted education or perhaps no formal education before coming to the United States are different than what we use with those that are really academically trained. So we offer classes from the beginning to the advanced level to meet the needs of a spectrum of learners, where we have those that are true beginners to the English language as well as people at the advanced level. So our learners are highly motivated, really inspirational people to work with, to answer your question.
Jenna, what would you like to see the City Council do more of? What do you believe that there needs to be more programs to help folks learn English?
I do, and it harkens back to when I was actually campaigning to run for this office and became one of my campaign platform goals, was that I thought that it seemed like we were doing an adequate job at workplace English, but beyond workplace English, and that's kind of where the federal funding runs out. You know, when it gets to conversational English and fluent English, which are larger commitments. You know, workplace English is 6 to 8 weeks, conversational English is 3 years, fluent English is 7 years. We were woefully lacking, and when I went around, I tried to talk to every diverse community I could find, locate, and get feedback from them. So I've talked to as many entities as I could find and would have me, and I said, would it be helpful if the city government took a more active role in making English classes readily accessible and available, you know, on a more holistic basis? And without hesitation, every group I spoke to said, oh yes, that would be so helpful. Because with the ability to speak English, again, workplace conversational, each level fluent, each level you get to, then your opportunities for employment increase accordingly, and your opportunities for success are created accordingly. If you go backwards, if you continue to leave this 2008 people untrained and you don't provide those opportunities, then those are the ones that can't pull themselves up by the bootstraps, end up in jobs that aren't well paid, and they slide back into the benefits programs and into the depression and into the addiction, and they become our failures. So I think government working in partnership with the business sector, because I've also had conversations with Forward Sioux Falls and some of our large employers in town who are willing to come to the table, with government and with LSS, and we're actually working with STI, and I'd like eventually for us to work with the Multicultural Center and expand their offerings. And then I've also been in touch with the school district about coming up with an individualized program that could be done maybe through laptops and that could be checked out of the library. And actually, we've toyed with the idea of having classes taught on CityLink in the early hours of the morning that could be downloaded, so that you could have an individual program. One of the things that I've learned from talking to the LSS folks is once they get here and they learn that workplace English, they're working, they're raising children, sometimes they're working 2 jobs. So when I say accessible, we have to make it, we need to take a comprehensive approach so that there's multiple points of entry into that loop of learning so that they can get it at different places. And so that's why I'm wanting to expand a similar program at LSS like we have going on right now with STI. And then again, perhaps, Multicultural Center, and then, again, something through the school district, in our library system, I think would be, really kind of saturating it and really giving those people that are coming in, that are going to continue to come into our community, those opportunities. Once they get on that loop, that first 7 years is a long one, but once we start kicking out them, then everything moves forward. So you can see I get very excited about it. But they're here because I want to take the next step, where we are now currently funding some classes that are being taught at STI, and I'd like them to kind of explain what I asked them to put together to present to the city. Mm-hmm. So we're in that budget cycle right now, and I'm wanting to get some funding for them to be able to start this kind of programming.
Let's talk a little bit about it. I think there's a misconception when we're talking about new Americans and that they're unwilling to learn English. Is that what you see, or is it just not the opportunities to try to learn English? You're shaking your head.
Yeah, I'm going to let Laura take this to start, and then I'll add.
Okay.
Yeah. That I would agree that with you, Madeline, that seems like a misconception or misperception that people have. For those of us that have lived in other countries ourselves and studied other languages, it's not something, to Jana's point, that happens immediately. That there's a period of time that people need to invest in their learning to become fluent English speakers. And I've met people that are here as professionals that say, I've lived here for 20 years and I'm still learning the language. I myself find that there are certain areas of jargon and areas of expertise where I'm still learning English too, even though I was born here. So there's a real process in becoming a fluent English speaker. The people that we work with in our program, which equates to about 700 students a year at Lutheran Social Services, are really motivated to learn the language, need a lot of confidence and encouragement in that process, and really benefit from speaking with people in the community that are patient listeners and understand that you may want to be here, but right now you're halfway there. And it is, people feel shy about speaking up. So we have individuals that will be out in our community that may be at a level 2 or 3 in our program. When asked by a native speaker, do you speak English? That say, no, I don't understand. Well, it's kind of like me speaking with a native Spanish speaker. Mm-hmm. I will say I speak a little Spanish and I need them to speak slowly. So there's really a curve, a learning curve, but also a process of gaining confidence in representing themselves well in the community. We give them a lot of pep talks in the classroom, but provide as much instruction as we can for people, not only that come as refugees, but we also have funding through the Department of Labor and Regulation that allow us to provide classes for immigrants. So we really diversify our funding as best we can. but are limited in morning, afternoon, and evening classes with a reduced schedule. So people are motivated and willing, but have lots of life demands like raising their kids, working 2 and 3 jobs, sending a lot of money back home. So people are really willing and motivated, but are sometimes looking to manage multiple priorities while they're learning.
And if I could just dive in here, one of our success stories over at STI, which is why I want, and soon we'll kind of get into what we're proposing here, is that we 2 years ago gave them $100,000 to start a program. It's a joint cooperative effort, with employers who are paying, so they're learning carpentry skills and out in the field learning those skills, and at the same time they have in-house classroom training. They're being paid by the potential employer, in an apprentice program, and then kicked back out into the community with skills and improved English language. It doubled in 1 year, and last year we gave them another $50,000, and I would expect that you'll see us give them a little more money this year because we're super excited. And what we're talking about here again it's not just government's responsibility. It is certainly not just LSS's, but as a community, the business community is very interested in this because it's a workforce development issue. And I know that Forward Sioux Falls has set it as one of their goals. So if you want to dive in a little bit to the programming, we're looking at something similar here where we can do a combination of on-site learning, in a business and learn workplace English and skills, and more than workplace, continue the fluent English training along with the skills training.
Right, Rebecca, tell us a little bit about, when I did ask the question about there is a misconception. People think, they don't want to learn how to speak English, but the opportunities just are not there.
Well, I can speak to the proposal. So Janet approached us and just gave us her vision and dream for how she sees this developing in our community and asked what could be done. And so what we proposed is really a strategy to reduce the barriers that exist for people to access their English language classes. And there are a number of innovative strategies that we've deployed over the years to try to reduce those barriers. But again, funds are limited, so our ability to do that sometimes is limited too. So there are a couple of ideas that are laid out in our proposal, but one of them is to bring English language classes to the workers themselves. So offering classes within a workplace setting that would allow you to go work your shift at your employer, and then after you leave, you can go next door to a class and learn English that way. By doing that, we're eliminating those time barriers relative to transportation and getting across town, which may make it difficult for people who are working 1 or 2 jobs to access those classes. Another barrier that we often see is individuals lack childcare. So if I am a mother or father with young children, I may not have somebody who is able to care for them while I take my English class. So being able to offer childcare to those individuals so that they can access English language classes. So really our focus is just trying to eliminate some of those barriers, make classes more accessible, expand the number of hours a day that we are able to offer classes so that if you're working an overnight shift or you're working a late night shift or you're working a day shift, that there's an option for you to access classes.
How much money are we talking about that it will take to get some of these programs started?
I would like to see us put $100,000 in, either through a supplemental ordinance for this year's budget or get it in the 2021 budget.
And do you think employers are willing to also help foot the bill for this so that, we have such a low unemployment rate and people are desperate for employees. And if they can't speak English, then they can't really work with customers. Will they help, do you believe?
I completely believe they will. And I think that's why we went down the path we did. And that's why I'm working with LSS, because they have those relationships already. They're already, teaching them the workplace English and getting them into the employers, so the relationship exists. And that's why we worked with STI. They've got those relationships too, and that's why I intend to work with the Multicultural Center, because they're all, these are the entities that I was able to find have the most access to the diverse community, and the business relationships, the ones that can pull it all together. And then again, the school district issue, I think for me, the school district is they're teaching thousands of classes every day. We're doing a pretty dang good job with the children, is what I found when I went on my fact-finding mission. But it's their parents that are struggling, that we have to get, into a loop that allows them to track down a successful path. And the school system, if we can just tap into that, it's already existing. They have a learning center. And I think the prongs are all there too. And I was working with Dr. Maher. Unfortunately, he's going to be leaving, but I've asked him, I've actually talked to the folks down there. As soon as whoever the new person gets here, I'm going to start my lobbying efforts to see if I can get that person as excited as Dr. Maher was. He said, I'd love to work with you on something like that, because it's just a matter of capturing what already exists.
Right. Do you agree that the school system is a great resource to help, since they're teaching the children already?
We have a great partnership with the Sioux Falls School District and have over the years. They have a really wonderful family immersion program where they take newcomers in to learn English quickly and then quickly integrate them into the school system. So I would say we have a really great partner in the school district.
How soon before you take this proposal to the City Council, and how soon do you think it may be approved?
Well, we had our goal setting meetings, last week, and it kind of fell in the middle of the priorities, and so now I'm going to kind of take my efforts to the mayor and to some of his support staff and talk with him about it as well, and just see about, again, as the budget is forming, see about the interest level from the administration as well, and then just that shared interest with the council. Continue to lobby my fellow council members on the need for this.
Okay, so. And I don't believe this will be the last we're going to hear about this. So
I hope not.
Well, thank you both for joining us. When we come back, we are going to talk about sustainability in the city of Sioux Falls, and that includes air, land, and water. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Dr. Dahl from Falls Community Health, here today to talk about a vaccine against human papillomavirus, or HPV. You may have heard that the HPV vaccine helps prevent cervical cancer in girls, but the HPV vaccine is for boys too. It helps reduce the risk of certain types of mouth and throat cancers. We recommend vaccinating your children at age 11 or 12. However, we can start the vaccine series as early as age 9. Help protect your children against cancer and bring them in to start their vaccine series today. For more information about the HPV vaccine, please contact your physician.
Well, welcome back to Inside Town Hall. We would like to turn our attention now to sustainability. Our guest now is City Councilor Janet Brecky is back, and her guests are David O'Hara with Augustana University. He's the Director of Sustainability. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Jordan Deffenbaugh, who is with Strong Towns, and that's a national nonprofit. Thank you for joining us. Let's talk a little bit about what are we talking about when it's sustainability.
Sustainability and resiliency have become national topics of conversation, with our larger cities leading the way. Cities like Los Angeles that have small land mass and lots of people have to take seriously issues of water quality, land quality, air quality. They have to take those things seriously. So they have done amazing innovative things, and when I was out there for National League of Cities, they have an entire division, a huge multi-million-dollar division and building structure, all dealing with sustainability. And when I'm talking about land quality, air quality, water quality, it's things like, it's innovative things. It's just the sky's the limit. Putting incentives on electric cars to reduce gas emissions. Little Rock, Arkansas has switched to propane for their fleet, for their fleets, because it's the less polluting. So it's a matter of, for us, having the luxury of being in the center of the country. We can look at all these kinds of things that these larger cities are doing, and what we need to do is get into sustainability master planning so that we can actually have a plan on how to live environmentally correct in a way that we could, if we get out in front of this, we might never have smog. If we don't, we will. That's a known. But there's so many things that can be done. And when I talk about water quality, we need to be partnering with Friends of the Big Sioux River. We are the hugest city. We like to have this excuse, well, what we do here won't matter because of what they're doing up north. No, somebody's got to start. It should be Sioux Falls. And so when we were talking about bees, I had raised this issue that bees were just the beginning, and we recently passed a bee ordinance that made Sioux Falls a bee-friendly city. And these gentlemen sought us out, myself and Teresa Staley, because they heard the word come from our lips. And so we started talking. And when I get talking with these guys, I get so excited that I want you to hear them speak and put a little more detail and definition into what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about, David, you are the Director of Sustainability at Augustana University. What is the goal?
Well, the goal of sustainability is to make sure that the things that we all need in order to make a living and to live our lives are available to us, to our neighbors, and to those who come after us. So one way you could think about sustainability is about living in such a way that we become good ancestors. Or one simple way that people have put it is to talk about the triple bottom line of sustainability, where we make sure that people, the planet, and profitability are all three thriving. Sometimes you get environmental movements where you're willing to care for the people and the planet, but it costs too much to keep it up, or where one of the others is left out. And what we want to do is try to figure out ways that we can change, sometimes subtle changes, and sometimes slightly larger changes to the systems that we rely upon, so that the people who live downstream from us benefit from clean water just as we benefit from the clean water that comes from upstream. And not just with water, but with food, energy, clean air, etc. For me, as a professor of environmental studies and as the chair of the religion department at Augustana, I'm really interested in us loving our neighbors as ourselves, and I'm interested in seeing opportunities for my students to learn by doing. So when it comes to something like beekeeping, I want my students to pay attention to the way that the whole ecosystem is related. Something like a third of the food that you and I will eat today depends upon pollinators. And we know that we've got beehives all over the country that move around on 18-wheelers in order to get to the places where they're needed in time. We also know that we're stressing those bee populations and that we have suffered an insect decline across the country and across Europe as well for a variety of reasons. So one of the simple things that we can do here is to create better habitat for those pollinators, and in so doing, we're creating better food systems for ourselves and for our neighbors and for those who come after us. It's a chance, when we do this sort of thing, it's a chance for my students and for all the students in the area to learn how to do a better job of creating food and of retaining the good things that we've got in this amazing place that we live, this rich soil, so that the people who come after us 1, 2, 7, 100 generations later can still have the same wealth of landscape and of food that we have.
And Jordan, tell us about Strong Towns, the national nonprofit that you work with. What are you doing to help with these efforts?
So Strong Towns is very much focused on resiliency, predominantly financial resiliency, but I believe in multiple forms of capital. There is financial capital, of course, but then there's also natural capital. There's spiritual capital, there's intellectual capital. And I believe that in creating an ecosystem for things to thrive, you have to understand all the key components that need to exist. So we believe with Strong Towns, or me personally, in my personal efforts, I want to see habitats across the city, across the region, because I believe that we should almost have a corridor for pollinators. So we speak of bees, but there's also, say, the monarch butterfly that comes from Mexico and migrates across the entirety of the United States. Well, we've been seeing dwindling numbers of the monarch butterfly, partly because of habitat loss. So how do we create more habitats? Now, there's a Strong Towns member that has his entire lawn is a pollinator habitat. He started at the median, and then he took over the entirety of the lawn. It has flowers everywhere. It looks beautiful. And I think there's little things that people can do to help in this issue. As far as the city goes, I think we need to start looking at how do we make nature corridors? How do we look at city parks and stuff? We don't necessarily have to mow them. We can turn a plot of land purely into grassland. We can make it a space where it's integrating wildlife into our urban environment. So I think I'm very much interested in like the on the ground. What are the actions that can be done?
And
so,
people can do that. I mean, we can all do this.
Yes.
Where do we get the information on how we can do this ourselves?
Well, there's no particular place right now where you can get the information, but again, with the bee ordinance, it would be the health department if you're interested in having honeybees. That's the one we regulated. Pollinators, I mean, they don't even have stingers. It's important to understand that they don't have stingers. So all over in various box stores and hardware stores throughout the city, for $24 to $34, you can get a little unit that looks just like a birdhouse, and you can put it in your backyard, and it's very low maintenance, and it'll have all these little pollinator bees hovering around there doing their thing, and it's fun. So it's really easy, fun, educational for kids, fun thing to do. The other thing that I wanted to mention, and that kind of tip off of what you just said in that land use issue that I'm looking at is, we're in the process of reforesting our city right now because of the ash borer, and I think there's an opportunity here, and I've been really trying hard to get some interest in our Parks Department as we reforest. Teresa Staley has been talking for years about Project Trim and the need for the city to take care of its own boulevard trees, and this is she was doing it more for a taxpayer benefit, but when you look at it from a sustainability effort, most people don't trim their trees as aggressively as an arborist would have them do that. So as we replant our trees, if the city would undertake that activity, we would grow our urban forests quicker, we'd replace it quicker, we'd get it to canopy better and faster, which also has a whole lot of benefits. So it's things like that in addition that we need to be thinking about as a city, and not just not just having those things kind of happen accidentally, but in a focused, planning kind of way.
Okay. Well, and I think we will have lots more discussion on this as you bring it before the city council and they make their decisions on moving the city toward this effort. Thank you guys for being here for Inside Town Hall. At this point, let's turn our attention, you guys just hang on here for a second. Let's turn our attention to the City Council strategic planning. You wanted to get a little bit in, talk a little bit about the 2020 budget for strategic planning.
Yes, we did in the 2020 budget $3,000 for visionary goal setting. This will be a first for the City Council, and I've said for years that's what we're there to do. We are the policy setting body for the city. We just have not taken an aggressive role like the charter actually asks us to do. So this will be a start. There'll be 2 sessions, and we're first just going to kind of study our organization and understand who we are as an organization and what we want. Try to meld us together, into just as an organizational approach. And then the second one will be to actually go through a process to do some big picture goal setting. One of the goals I intend to bring to the table, sustainability master planning.
Okay.
Over a 5-year plan, how do we staff it? How do we fund it? One of the goals I intend to bring to the table, fluent English programming. How do we do it? Get the council into that big picture mode, and then eventually, hopefully, I would like to see a true, long-range strategic master planning, again, done in tandem, jointly, with the mayor leading out and the council dovetailing into it.
Okay, well, that's our time, and thank you. You can check out more about sustainability. I'm sure they can reach you at Augustana University.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate you all being here today.
Thanks for having
That's
us.
our time.
Thank you.
Go to siouxfalls.org for more information. We'll see you next time.